Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traders Mind Chat live show. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to find the best setups, not just in the current market, but really to think through what type of market environment we're in and what are the best setups in the current environment. This topic actually came from one of our Twitter followers, so that reminds me too. Wherever you are watching this stream from, go ahead, type it into the chat now. And by the way, hit the like button and drop comments down, because that is what is going to help blast this out to a lot more people. This is a very important message, as you guys know. So go ahead, do that now, and I appreciate you helping to share these streams with everybody. So let's get into it. We are talking about how to find the best setups in the current market, and there's really three things that we're going to be discussing along with that today. We're going to be discussing the current market and the types of setups that are appearing right now. We're going to be talking about how to tell if you are about to buy a leader or if you are about to buy a laggard, and how to avoid those laggards and focus on the leaders. And finally, I'm going to talk about how to pick setups with the greatest chance of success. And just like always, we will open it up to open Q&A at the very end. So, all that said, let me share my screen and we will get started. And of course, as we're going through this, as you have questions, please type them into the chat. This is meant to be a very interactive and engaging thing. So as questions come up, pop them into the chat. So first thing that we're talking about again is the current market and the types of setups now appearing. So if we want to first try to figure out, well, how do we find the best setups in the current market? Well, we need to know what the current market is. Right, like that just kind of makes sense. Like if we want to know, well, what type of flowers are getting ready to grow, well, we need to know what season we're in. So take that mindset and we apply that to the market. And so that's why over the past couple of days, couple of weeks, Caleb, see that you are signing in here. Caleb from Holly Springs, North Carolina. Caleb's one of our elite members. Welcome, Caleb. Yeah, so over the past couple of weeks, we've been doing a basics of what I call the market mood, and that's starting to introduce everybody to how to gauge the overall mood of the market, the overall health of the market, trying to figure out, is this thing moving up, down, or sideways? And for you guys here that are a little bit more advanced, the first thing that we want to try to figure out is, what is the current condition of the market? And we start that by zooming out and looking at the major indices on the monthly time frames. And then we could see pretty clearly from here, right? Like just let your eyeballs move from left to right, and you can see a clear uptrend over here. This is the S&P 500. Same thing, same kind of uptrend on the NASDAQ. Over here on the Russell, things seem like they're moving sideways. They were moving sideways for a bit, started to break out over here. Right, that's the month of November. Apologize if you guys hear any background noise. People to clean up the leaves just showed up about 5 minutes ago. And then we're pulling back a little bit on the Russell. So things are sideways over here on the Russell. NYSE still moving up, breaking out, moving up, arguably sideways. And same thing over here on the Dow. But this is how you start to see like where you're at. Where are you at in the cycle, right? So even to just stick with the monthly time frames for a little bit, if you are in a cycle where you just broke out and now you're in an uptrend and you are moving sideways here for a couple of months, maybe you're starting to see some a little bit more mature names, right? Names that have already run and are now forming maybe their second base or their third base. Maybe you're seeing some IPOs, right? Like it's those types of things that you're starting to look for that because again, the idea is that we want to not just find any old setup, right? Because well, when we do our screening, if you guys are following along, Caleb, I know that you're doing this, being part of the elite program. When we're doing our screening every weekend, part of what we're looking for is not just the setups that happen to show up. We're looking at what setups fit the current environment. So when we're looking at, say, the weekly timeframes, and we're over here on the weeklies, and we're starting to see things consolidate a little bit over here. Yeah, before over here, these are the monthly time frames, and this is the weekly. My apologize for that. I misspoke earlier. So these are the weeklies. The weeklies are starting to move sideways over here. You can see like how so this makes even more sense, right? You're in this broader uptrend. You're starting to move sideways over here. These are all add-on buys, right? Like that. This is the time where you would be looking to add on to a position. If you are if you're trading long and you're trading bullish and you have a position and the positions are acting well, this is a time where you would look to add to position. So you'd be looking for those types of add-on buys, those types of shorter bases. So for example, right, like let me pull down some of what we were looking at over the weekend here. Right there, this is another tool that I like to use. It's called MarketSmith. Do a lot of my initial screening in this tool here. Now, I want to show and share with you some of the setups that we saw over the weekend. Right, here's one. ON. Boy, that sure moved quite a bit. Now, uh, a stock like this is a more of a recent IPO. Part of what we're looking for, given the market conditions too, is to have an understanding of, all right, what types of setups are working, right? So IPOs in a leading group, right? Jot that down. You want to look for leaders, leading stocks. You want to look for leading stocks in leading groups, right? So the stock here happens to be in a top rated industry group, right? And you don't need to necessarily have a tool like MarketSmith to find this. That you could find which groups are leading through other means. You could look at sector ETFs, take a look at those charts, see which way they're moving. If you were to look at, say, investors.com, let's say find a hot stock, you're interested in it, maybe you're interested in this one, ONON. You could head on over to a website like investors.com, put in the ticker, and it'll tell you which group, which industry group it belongs to and the rank, right? So this one happens to be 39. It's in a top group, and then they don't all move like that, but that's part of the formula. That's part of the success formula. That's part of setting yourself up for success, where you're stacking the odds in your favor. That's really the name of the game of this, right? Stacking the odds in your favor. Go through some more of these over here. Right, here's another recent IPO, bunch of IPOs. This one broke out initially down here for us, was on our radar last week, continued to follow through on Monday. So recent IPOs in the bank. Here's an interesting one. Roblox broke out last week. All right, Roblox that broke out last week, and you might say, oh well, that's already run a long way and it's far away. Well, one of the things to look at too, and let me bring you over to this over here. Now we're back looking at some other charts here on TradingView. One of the things that I saw on Roblox was that, yes, it had that big breakaway gap, but if you drill down just a little bit and you start to look at, say, a 30-minute time frame, you could see a little bit clearer here some other patterns. And then you get to see some things that are called fractal patterns, like patterns within patterns. This is a pretty clear, pretty compelling cup with handle. Right? Look at that. Starts with a breakaway gap, for rounds out the bottom of the base. The volume dries up very well at the bottom, starts to build on the right side of the base. Then in the handle, volume dries up to where it's almost non-existent. And then once it finally breaks out, here comes your volume surge. And there it goes. It's an add-on buy. It's an add-on buy in leaders. That's kind of the market environment that we're in, right? So it's a matter of figuring out what type of environment are we in? What type of environment are we in? Getting a little bit ahead of myself here. But yeah, you want to start out by figuring out what type of market environment you're in. Start on the monthly time frames, drill down to the weekly time frames, take a look at the daily time frames too, and that'll start to tell you the simply by right like so some of the things to look at. Right, like don't want to leave anybody behind. And if you are, if I'm talking a little too fast, just let me know. Type in the comments, say, hey, you're talking too fast. Let me catch up here, or whatever questions you have. Go ahead, type them in. But one of the things to look at here on a daily time frame too, right? You have your five major indices plus I have over here. Always like to keep this up. This is the IBD 50, tracks growth stocks. One of the things to look at too, well, which way are the moving averages moving? Right, there's a bunch of them on the screen, but it's pretty easy to tell which way they're pointed. Right, you can tell that they're pointed. That these, at least these shorter term ones, are pointed up. Right, same on pretty much all the charts. They're all pointed up. Those shorter term ones. Then you have that red one there. That's a 50-day moving average. That's a little bit flatter. It's starting to curve up. Well, part of that is telling us that, yeah, well, we've run quite a bit and now price is consolidating a little bit. So given that, right, given that price has run quite a bit, price started running in early October to finally started consolidating around the beginning of November, ran for about a month. And now price is moving sideways again. Well, wouldn't that tell you that maybe it's time to start looking for some add-on buy candidates? Right? Maybe it's maybe some of the stocks that were running in the beginning, maybe they might be taking a little break. Right? Maybe we might want to look at some potential add-on buys there. Maybe we might want to see like what types of other setups there are. Well, that's part of what we're looking for. Right? So bring this back down. So that's how we come up with this list. Over the weekend too, we found a list of 70 potential setups this week. Many of them moving quite well, right? Like you have ONON, Roblox, Coco. Here's another one that's starting to consolidate. Silvergate, right? Started running when? Right? Really? Well, what did we say? When did this move start? On the indexes started October what? October 4th, October 5th, October 6th. When did this thing break out of here? Oh, would you look at that? October 5th breaks out, consolidates, right? Breaks out again on November 1st, runs up pretty quickly, then consolidates a little bit more, tightening up right here. Maybe it's getting ready to break out again. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball that's been in the shop for a real long time, but we can see how price is consolidating. We can tell that price is tightening up over here, right? Like it doesn't take an advanced degree or anything like that to just see that, yeah, price is pretty wide over here and it's getting progressively tighter as we're moving along. So if we treat this as a spot to say, okay, I'll get in if price breaks out above here. And if price does break out above here, I'll exit if it starts to fall back. Then what we've done is we've defined our entry point. We've defined our exit, right? Like we've defined our risk. And then what we want to try to figure out next too is where is our potential reward, right? And that's part of uh, figuring out the reward to risk ratio. But that's a topic for another day. The main idea though is finding the the stocks for the current market type. Now, how do you know if you're about to buy a leader or a laggard? How do you tell if you're about to buy a leader or a laggard? Now, that's a good question. Well, one way to find out is when you are looking for all these different setups, right? And here's some of the setups that were on the list from yesterday. Let's see which ones are doing well here. Starting to potentially move out of this. Some of the things to look for. And another recent IPO. You notice that a lot of these are recent IPOs. I'm noticing that too. But here's a stock that's in the business services sector, and the group rank is 58. Right, 58 out of 197. Not too bad. Not the best, but not terrible. One of the things that I like to look at down here is not just what the group rank is right now, but what was the group rank last week? Right, it's 2 spots better than last week. Okay, it's improving a little bit. What was it 3 months ago? Right, 3 months ago it was 171. Big jump from then. Great, and that's probably what helped propel some of this move here. But what else? Right? How do we know if it's a leader or a laggard? Well, one way is to take a look at some of the other names in the group. That's part of what I like MarketSmith for too. They tell you some of the top names in the group. So just flip through some of these names and see where they happen to be at. Are you buying the leader or are you buying the laggard? Well, looking at this, and then coming back to gambling.com, it doesn't seem to quite be the leader, but it seems to be a leader among that group, which is kind of interesting to see. Let's see another example here. I think InMode has been one of the top leaders in its group. Let's flip through some of the other charts in here. Actually, no, Beyond Air. That one's leading right now. Suave. IRMD, OMCL. So you look at this, and yeah, it's a leader, not necessarily the leader. So that's really the way, or it's one way to quickly find out if you are buying a leader or a laggard, to not just look for the setup that you find, but to compare that setup to some of the others in its group. You want to compare that setup to the other setups in its group or how the other stocks are performing in its group. What kind of a run has it had? What does the price and volume action tell you? What does the relative strength line look like versus the other ones in its group? What do all those things look like? What do they tell you? And are you buying the leader? Right? Are you placing an order for the leader? Is the leader setting up? Is it a leader? Right? Like maybe it's not number one, but maybe it's in the top three or the top five, or is it a laggard? Right? Where maybe it's a stock that's just starting to get going and it hasn't really moved a whole lot. It's setting up, but there's others in the group that are far outpacing it. Do you really want to be in the laggard? Probably not. It's probably better options out there. Now, another question is how to pick the setups with the greatest chance of success. Now, that isn't that the $1,000,000 question, right? How do we pick the setups with the greatest chance of success? Well, there's a few ways to do it, right? One, we want to pick the right themes, right? And how do we pick the right themes? Who's on the ball? Right? Type it into the chat. Let me know if you were paying attention. Well, what were we talking about earlier, right? Well, what's the first thing that we want to check? We want to check what the current market looks like, right? So we want to flip through the monthly charts, the weekly charts, the daily charts. Well, what's the current market look like? What's the overall health of the market? Yes, it's a little bit goes a little bit deeper than just well, what do the charts look like? But that's certainly a great place to start. So, what are the indexes look like? What are the setups look like? Well, what types of setups are you finding? Right? Are you finding a lot of recent IPOs? Are you finding constructive setups? Are you finding setups that match the current market environment? Right? So, like back here, just to give you a quick example, back here in October, beginning of October, here's some of the ideas that I've been holding now for a little while, right? Donnelly Financial. This was a great looking setup back here, right? Broke out. Let me clear some of my annotations. I don't want to confuse anybody there. They make a lot of sense to me, but if you're seeing some of this for the first time, you might be like, well, what the hell? That guy has a little too much on his screen. But back here, right? Take all that stuff off. You see, this is just moving sideways for a real long time, right? Moving sideways for a real long time. Moving sideways for a real long time. Let's look at it on a weekly chart. That might be even better. Yeah, just moving sideways, right? And then all of a sudden, the major indexes they break out, and this is one of the first ones to break out. Now, what would happen if we saw this setup right now after the indexes have already made their move, right? And many stocks, many of the leaders have already made their move. Well, what would happen, right? Like, well, would this be a leader or would it be a laggard? Type into the chat. Well, what do you think? Do you think that this would be a leader or a laggard if this were breaking out over here this week rather than a month ago? You're right, it would be a laggard. The reason why is because the leaders are the first ones out of the gate when the market starts going. Now, this broke out in a big way. It's been a leader. Come back over to a daily time frame. And yeah, it's pulling back now. It's pulling back now, but it's still been a leader. Some of the other ideas here. Right here's a few other ideas. Right now, here's one. Arista Networks breaks out. Where to break out? Back here, right? That's when it's starting to make its fresh highs. Mid October, right? Just as the market is starting to get going. And then what happens? Right? It makes its big move. It gaps up gigantically after earnings. And now, look at it. It's trading sideways. And what's the market doing? Right? Here's the daily charts of the market. Well, why don't I just blow up the S&P 500, right? Uh, Look at the S&P 500 just moving sideways. And now we've got Arista Networks. Giant gap up and it's trading sideways. You want to trade the stocks that are trading similar to the market, right? This is a leader in the market. You could tell it not just by the price action, right? The price action is pretty obvious. You could also tell it by the relative strength. Look at that relative strength line. This line right down here, right? That's the relative strength versus every other stock in the S&P 500. Right? How is this thing performing versus the S&P 500? Well, it's outperforming. You can tell by the way that this thing is moving almost vertically. And I have these lines, these trend lines set up to how has this relative strength moved over the past 50 days? How has it moved over the past 10 days? And yeah, it's been outperforming over both, trending higher. So that's part of what you want to look for the best ideas for success. If they break out and you're in a trending market and the leaders that you're seeing consolidate like this break out, those are the ones that are going to tend to lead, right? Just like your Roblox. Right? Look what happened. It breaks out. Recent IPO breaks out. Massive volume. Consolidates quickly. Right? It looks like it's not buyable, but you drill down. Right? You don't just accept that. You drill down. You look at the at a 30-minute time frame, and you start to see, well, where does this, right? Oh, there's a cup with handle on the 30-minute time frame. Where does that land? Right? Where does that land on a daily chart? Oh, that gives you a stop loss right down here, right below that day's low. Oh, interesting. How about this? Where does it land on a weekly chart? Oh, well, that would have been the week's low. Oh, well, that isn't that interesting. That's how you start to play some of these other ideas that seem like, oh, maybe they got away, but did they really get away? Or can we find another way in for some of these big leaders? Anyhow, I want to leave a little bit of time open for open Q&A here. Open up the floor. I'll let you guys ask some questions related to this, questions related to anything else that you have on your mind. Let me know. Type into the chat. Yeah, Caleb says that he caught this one yesterday. Should have kept it. Well, when there's always room to improve too, right? Like so, there's a bunch of things to dissect in that. One of the first things to dissect it is well done for catching it at all, right? Not everybody is catching trades like this. So when you do have it, applaud your success, right? Like so often, uh, most people's default, my default was like this for a long time too. You tend to kick yourself when you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? Give yourself a little blue ribbon and tell yourself that you did a good job, right? You got that idea. You nailed it. You made a profit, right? That profit's in your account now. Good job. Here's your blue ribbon. Now, can we do something better? Right? There's always ways to do better, right? Like I've been trading for 20 years, more than 20 years. I'm constantly striving to get better, right? Like there's no ceiling to this. So give yourself the blue ribbon and look for a way to improve. Well, what could have been done better? Well, what would have allowed you to hold this a little bit more? Could you have scaled out of a little bit of it and held the rest? Right? Under what circumstances might you have done that? Would it be appropriate to do that given the current market conditions too, right? Um, the market conditions affect me and how I position size and how aggressively I might decide to lock in gains or cut losses. This game is a constant evolution, and it's definitely uh, a challenging game, and it's one that I find to be a little bit easier when you have other people around you that you could bounce ideas off of and talk to and discuss things with. Let me know what other questions you guys have. Go ahead, type it in. One of the things in here too, let me switch over to this. This was a big topic yesterday. Might still be a big topic today. Bitcoin, all right, had this posted on Stock Twits yesterday. The price was breaking out, broke out of this big cup with handle, right? Broke out of a big cup with handle, finally broke into fresh all-time highs last week. Cup with high handle because the handle was slightly higher than this peak over here and pulled back this week. But what's it pulling back to? Well, you have this peak over here. I'll leave some of these annotations on. You see that dotted line right there? Right? That dotted line, that's the prior peak from back here. Sometimes prior resistance turns into a level of support, and that's what you're seeing over here. Sometimes the 10-week moving average acts as a layer of support, and you have both of those. You have this prior resistance level as a layer of support. You have the low of the handle in that same vicinity, and you have the 10-week moving average providing a potential layer of support. So you have a bunch of reasons in there for will it bounce? I don't know if it'll bounce, but you have eyeballs over there, and you have to think from both sides of, well, maybe it gets support, maybe it doesn't. But it's certainly an area of interest given those three major things. And Caleb was referring to ONON. Right, yeah, let's take a closer look at ONON. Right there it was, right there. Heck of a move over the past 3 days. And pulled right back into the 21-day moving average. Recent IPO. You might look at this whole structure here as a cup with handle. Maybe extend this part and you're starting to say, oh, well, it's inverted head and shoulders, kind of splitting hairs here. Either way, it's a great setup. Pull back, volume, pretty light there in the handle, and then you can't ask for a better breakout than that. Caleb says, should have set my orders to sell half. I had an OCO and was a 5% trailing stop. Should have not had that for half and could have kept it, but infinite stream of opportunity. Yes, it's always an infinite stream of opportunity. That's one of the things I actually write that to myself every morning. Every morning, I write a little note to myself, handwritten note. The market is an infinite stream of opportunity. I find that writing those little affirmations really helps center me and focus me. And I keep that in mind as I'm doing the rest of my homework and building those other habits. It really helps cement the positivity and the positive aspects of all this, which is great to do. But yeah, that sounds like a great alternative way to test to scale out of ideas rather than using a 5% trail. Um, yeah, potentially uh, scaling out on the way up, right? Having multiple OCO orders. Um, if you're using Thinkorswim, I believe they let you set up to six or three OCO orders, six total orders at the time that you place your initial buy. Um, the way that I generally do it, I like to scale out of positions. So I'll take a little bit off at 1R. I'll take a little bit off at 2R. So that's one times my risk, and then take a little bit more off at two times my risk. And then I'll play out the rest on a move like we're having today over here, right? So just for perspective, right? So 2R is down here, right? So yesterday, pole vaulted to 3R, so I would have been out of half of this. Then today, runs up to 7. Yeah, I'm when I see a gigantic move like that, I'm selling at least a good chunk of it. Right? I'd be selling probably about 25-30% into that move. Kind of like what happened here with WSC. So had WSC still have 20% of WSC, but what happened back here, if we zoomed in on this day, right? Well, let's turn off some of this stuff here, and we'll come back to this. So what happened on this day, right? Price gaps up like this, right? And so I see that first thing in the morning, I'm selling that, right? I'm locking in like half of my gains right there because that's just so far extended that I don't want to give that back. Now, you fast forward to today, and price is about back there, but you don't know necessarily if price is going to come back or if price might do something like this. Just don't know. So that's why it tends to be so important to lock in gains. Lock in gains when you have them. It's a way that the market is trying to pay us, right? And if the market really is an infinite stream of opportunity, then we should take the money when it's available. Take some of the money when it's available. Take it when it's available to your system, right? Like I'm speaking partially from the point of view of my own trading system, but at the same time recognizing that you guys have your own systems too. Maybe you're a day trader, maybe you're a swing trader, maybe uh, maybe you're a long-term investor. Uh, whatever style you have, when the market makes the money available to you per your system, per your methodology, it's time to take some of it, take some of those gains, have a method to pay yourself. It's an important thing. So let me know. Any other questions here? We're a little bit over time, but that's okay. Let me know what other questions you guys have. By the way, we are starting, actually, yeah, we, being myself and the good people over at StockTwits, are starting a local meetup, right? Like to meet up in person. And that is happening on December 8th, where we're meeting at a local pub near me in Massapequa Park. So check out meetup.com, look for StockTwits, and you'll find me on there, and you'll find that meetup there. It's going to be free food, free drinks, free swag, and good times had by all. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing many of our elite members in the Discord chat later today. We're doing an Ask Us Anything. We do that every Wednesday after the close. And then we have another meetup with the elite members, and we do that on Saturdays. That's a fun one. That's our deep dive. That's our mastermind. Yeah, Caleb, I'm hoping that we see you at least one of those. But yeah, for now, we'll wrap things up here. I want to say thank you all so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. Tomorrow, what are we talking about tomorrow? Tomorrow, I think, let me come over here and look at my pad. I should have had this written on here ready. But tomorrow's topic, yeah, we're talking about rules for different types of markets. The rules, differing rules for day trading, swing trading, long term, applying the different types of rules. What types of rules work best for universally, and what types of rules work best for you? So come tomorrow, check it out, and I will see you guys then. Take care, everybody. Much love. Peace out. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below and become a part of the Mara Wealth community. And make sure that you check out some of the other videos on the channel. They're exactly what you need to see. And leave a comment down below. I read all of them. Leave a comment.